well.
Yep.
That'd be a great benefit. Now, from previous demonstrations, we've got a pretty strong understanding of what they're looking for from an operations side. Obviously, it'd be great if they can join us to ask any questions, but I can't promise that that will be the case, unfortunately.
Yeah, not a worry. I've just started recording, so we're all aware of that. But definitely, Colin, afterwards, if you like, it'll be. If it's too long, I'll see if I can break it into those chunks in there. We'll sort of break it into more of the finance and the ops going down the track. What I might do is just a brief personal intro, but I'll just do a share screen to give you I'm not sure if have you previously seen Business Central in any capacity? Anyone in the team or in Workbench?
I've looked at some YouTube videos of Business Central and a little bit of Wise. Obviously, Workbench was a late addition to the proposal, and I had a quick look at that yesterday. There wasn't too much available, but certainly had a look around your website as well.
Well, you're a stalker like me. I like it. Yeah. No, I thought I'd just do a really quick, a couple of slides, just a brief intro. Just I assume that perhaps the other guys may have not seen it, so I'll just do there. Just a quick one on Clade. I'll call this Clade on the page. Obviously, Microsoft reached out. Colin, after you, I reached out to Microsoft to say, hey, who can help us out? We need to uplift our ERP and get a bit more cloud and then centralized and all those sort of good things that are very common nowadays. But with Clade, we are Microsoft Gold partners across Dynamics, Power Platform, O365 suite, which is your sort of Outlook, Modern Workplace, Teams and SharePoint and those sort of things. So Clade, we are more consultants than software vendors, which our friends that are going to be demonstrating the software side of the solution that we're offering. And obviously partners with Microsoft. We've got what they call MVPs on our side, which are pretty cool because we get that direct line into Microsoft whenever things get a bit challenging. So when you partner with Clade, it is not just with the application side of it or the partner side of it. It is actually with the Microsoft and of course Wise, which is quite important and as well. Just a brief history of Clade. Been around. This is our 10th year. It's our 10th year anniversary at the end of the year. We hit the fast 53 or something in the fast 100 in the AFR last year. The growth on growth has been amazing. When I first started about 4 or 5 months ago, we were 50 staff. We're now hit over 70, and it's just catapulted up. I think it's because of the way we implement projects and the word of mouth, and that's sort of been testament to a lot of longevity in there. But that's kind of enough about Clade. Obviously, it's important for you to know who Clade are. We'd be the main, I guess, channel through this whole engagement. Not to steal any thunder from, probably just a brief on the dynamics or the ecosystem or where it plays in there. And obviously, we're probably all familiar with Office 365, which is this top right-hand quadrant here. We're using Outlook, if we are using Teams and SharePoint and those sort of good things. Dynamics 365 sits in this layer here in the middle here, and obviously we're going to be showing you more Business Central, but it's just good to know that it sits in this whole ecosystem. And the whole point of it is that it has a shared, it's called a dataverse, a shared data repository, which is important as far as things like your reporting and those sort of things, have it all, and for integration as well, because it's a solid platform that integrates very well with external systems, as you'll see with Workbench. But yes, if you're not familiar with it, this is a vision that Microsoft had about 25 years in building what we're about to show you now. So all very well connected and slick, and probably as a good example, and not to steal Chris's thunder, he'll be showing you Business Central Financials, but what really sold me on Business Central was this integration to things like Outlook. This is a screen. Colin, if you did have a bit of investigations, you probably would have seen something like this. It's seamless integration. It's not like a messy little plug-in, but I'm sure Chris will be able to show you something like that. Just gives you an idea of the importance of having it all in that one platform. Obviously, it's for the usability, which is quite important for any new system, that it is easy to use. It's user-friendly. There's a lot of uptake there involved in the actual implementation. I think all these things are very important. Technology is great, but the customer experience is even more important, I think. And that's where I think the Microsoft product really shines in that regard. But we'll see, the proof will be in the pudding when the guys demonstrate to you at a high level some of the workplace scenarios. In the demo, as I mentioned before, we're going to be kind kind of showing you two sides of the overall solution. On the right hand side in the red box, there would be Chris is going to be focusing more on the financial side of things, PL, APAR, the cash book, and so on and so forth. And Justin's going to be taking you into more of the I guess the operational side of things, which is all those modules on the left hand side. We just obviously time will be limited, but you should get a really good idea of the overall solution from the demonstration. Now that's pretty much it from me. Chris, unless there's any questions, I wanted to give you a broad overview of what you're about to see, but unless there's any questions, I'll just handball the reins to Chris so he can get cracking on the financials.
Yeah, just so that everyone's understanding, we'll spend half an hour jumping through the financials, giving you a bit of an understanding of the sales and receivables, purchase and payables, but importantly, the financial reporting as well as the payroll. Before I share my screen, any questions? No, that sounds aligned. Perfect. Well, with that, I'll just share my screen. And it should be coming through now.
Yep, we're good.
So
that looks like my slide, mate.
Well, I got to say the data here does look a little bit better. Your company looked like they were going through some hard times. Well, the hope here is that a person can access Wise on any internet browser on any computer. And because we are on the Microsoft platform, just as Gus said, there is the option for a single sign-on with Microsoft 365. And he showed you one of the ways. There's multiple ways. But we'll try and, in this presentation itself, show a couple of different ways that we basically utilize the Microsoft 365 suite just to make your lives a little bit easier processing and less manual. The idea is that it's a role-based system. So based on my role within the organization, I get a tailored view of both the areas that I operate in, but as well as that, the quick actions I can complete, the live insights and the live data. Everything I'll be showing you today comes out of the box with the system. And the idea there is that we try and give, yes, instant live data so that anything that transacts is then shown straight to you. But to that point, we want everything to be actionable. So I see overdue sales invoices. I can drill down into that and I can straight away see the relevant documents. I can action those documents, send out reminders, bulk send that out. We want it to be that if you see something, you can basically react to it right there and then. And you would have seen this from the videos, but we try and really emulate the familiar look and feel of Excel. But we want to be able to give you, for one, a bit more functionality than what you would get from an Excel spreadsheet. So just trying to really utilize that familiar look and feel. And then as you scroll down through the role center, we try to provide insights and just live reports on everything that's occurring. Even these reports here, we want it to be so that you can interact with it. So if I see that from an operational side, we've got certain clients that have high sales value, I can then drill down into that and see either the transactions or the actual client information itself. I wanted to keep everything into a nice clean interface for you. So at all times, you can navigate down, can see live sales history, statistics, and we try and bring out information when you need it. While we have all of these preset dashboards and roles, we don't want to ever have that restrict users. So while I'm saying everything is out of the box and this isn't requiring customization, but we try and have it so that an end user can tailor or personalize what they're seeing, or you can do that for everyone using this role. So if something is relevant for myself, I can have it shown. We try and hide certain bits that we don't believe you'll need on day one, but naturally you can then just allow yourself to see that and then it's turned on. For instance, we provide videos, guides, and help articles when you first start using the system, but we don't want you to have to navigate past that afterwards. So it's just as simple as removing that from your view, and then the system will auto adjust to incorporate the changes you've made. That works across the board, whether it's on that earlier page where I want to be able to see my sales, I can tailor every single field that I see. I can adjust my view and I can drop and drag information. Just the same way, just so that you can have everything that you're seeing relevant for yourself. Now, on the reporting side, we'll be speaking strictly financial. So on that end, there are technically over 370 reports within the system. You can view them when you go to the relevant pages, but we try and set it up within the system so that you have central points to run the financial reporting. We can produce them as a PDF, Word, or Excel document, but we can also have you categorize them and set up how regularly you want them to be produced, run. And we want to reduce the manual aspect to that. So I can plan ahead to produce this report. I can, as well as planning ahead, if I have to produce it from this date or have it created, I can then have it run on a regular basis. That can then be reviewed via any one of the ways you access the system, whether it's the internet browser or whether it is via one of our apps on the app stores. So we naturally can be accessed via an iPad, via a mobile phone. And the idea there is that any scheduled report is just reviewed within your report inbox. So whether it's actual to budget over a period of your choosing, as well as year to date, client top 10 like we had before, or the accounts payable side. We want it to be sort of all these reports and all this information can be consolidated together, but also standardized in the way that it runs out. And just to give you the ability to investigate, so let's say if you see something that you want to be able to review or understand better, we've set it up so that the data can be connected. For instance, I could tailor these period ranges on this comparative income statement, but just to show you, like Gus said, show the proof in the pudding. I'll generate an actual report. This is just me making sure that you can see that I haven't prepared this. This is, yep, there we go. So for instance, whether it's revenue from a certain type of project, we can then see those figures and then I can investigate. Now I must stress, this is still going to use my single sign-on to make sure I am who I am, but it'll then drill back into the system and show me the transactions that were associated with that figure. From there, I could navigate over to then every single transaction related to that figure, whether it's the invoice itself, the GL entries, the customer, or the GST entries. So we want to be able to provide you an easy way to enter the data, whether it's an external report or whether it's the data itself. Now, to cover off a couple of things quickly, yes, even though we were formed with a strategic partnership of KPMG, Microsoft, and the Commonwealth Bank, we've got bank feeds set up for all the major Australian banks that comes with your subscription. So that when you're running reconciliations, they can auto-generate. They can also, as well as that, auto-match for reconciliation based on description, tolerance dates, amounts, and you can review that information. And naturally, if there's external factors that we want to be able to reconcile, we can then transfer them to be posted and then auto-reconcile. We've got that set up, but as well as that, we find with certain clients, you may be having a large amount of transactions that you have to manually reconcile. So what we recommend is that we've set up the bank feeds to flow through to what we describe as your payment reconciliation. That way, within the system, using those bank feeds, we can include, well, manual logic. I must stress, this is information that you would be able to understand. You see bank statement lines coming through with this, you then associate it with this debit account, this credit account, this customer, this vendor, just for it to reconcile the payments as well as the bank account in a faster fashion. All that then would lead down to our general ledger. Regarding the chart of accounts itself, it could be as extensive as you need it to be, alphanumeric, easy to set up and then manage across the board. But regarding the transactions themselves, just for instance, this data here are operating expenses. We use reporting tags to be able to give that data more value, more context. It most likely would be the two main ways you report on your business from an overall perspective. We describe them as dimensions. So this reporting on your operations by department, by client group, by cost center. It could be as simple as just that, a couple of different values. We can include it to be alphanumeric as well as hierarchical. That meaning that if you had an operating expense over in location A or in Sydney South, it could then roll up into the Sydney total, the New South Wales, and then the Australia total. And what that would look like, even if I just go back to that chart of accounts, is all the reports we had before can then be tailored to those values to filter down the totals, or it can be that, for instance, not to pick on you, if I were to say that I want to compare my sales operating expenses to my admin department, I could view this by the actuals, budgeted values. We could report on this by day, week, month, index amount. So we could then see both the surface amount from the chart of accounts, but then see how that figure is split between those two different values. So that could be the different cost centers that you operate with. We could have a balance sheet by cost center. Technically, we've got clients that use it even for salesperson. They have a P&L by salesperson, where we can then drill down and see those transactions. So that'd be our way of taking the data that you would be completing from an operational perspective from Workbench and then placing it in for financial reporting. And then that gives us the ability to, for one, do financial performance reports where we can see trends. We can then see actual to budget and the separation between the two, and then drill down into those figures. To quickly show you a process, what I'll do is I'll just create a couple transactions now and walk through those steps. But is there any questions just on the general look and feel, the way the system does standardized reporting or periodic reporting? No? Okay. No worries. Just so that when I go through this process, what would be an important one for us to cover with the time that we have? AR, AP, what sort of transaction that you're currently manually having to manage right now?
AP would be a good one.
Yep. Do you guys currently have to utilize OCR or anything like that to try and streamline it, or is it just manually keying this in?
No, we have invoices get uploaded through a program and then get posted automatically to the MyOb system.
Yeah.
But some are entered manually to match the orders that we send out.
Sure. No, completely understand. Okay. What we would usually do is we just show you a manual process, but just to play on what Gus was saying, I might even show you, try and do this using the Microsoft 365 tools. So in this example, I'll just jump through to my Outlook, go through to an email. So because we're on the Microsoft platform, Gus said, we try and use contact synchronization between the two systems so that, for one, I can see the fact that Crystal York here is associated with a supplier or a customer, and then I'll be able to see all of their relevant data from the system, whether it's their statistics, whether it's their sales or purchasing history, our age accounts payable and receivable. I can drill down and process. I could even from here, for instance, I could create the payment, or I could set up for this vendor to be paid. That'll set it up back within the system, but we want to be able to allow that from the email itself, as well as that if we're transacting. So if I were to actually react to what they're asking, the system can read the email, make suggestions on what it believes they're requesting, as well as read the multi-lines and the quantities, and it will then produce that back within Wise. The idea there is that it's just trying to streamline that process. We could actually have this automatically go through an approval procedure if you needed to. But even then, yeah, the idea is just with 2 clicks, I can generate an order, I can generate an invoice, or I could generate a quote that's outbound, and then have that processed within the system. That goes through live. So that's now back within Wise if I were to jump through. And then to streamline the steps afterwards, that can then auto-populate the payment journal to then be processed. We want it to be that so when you're running payment runs, naturally we can accommodate for EFT, we can accommodate for BPay batch. And what will happen is that it will allow us to even auto suggest based on your payment runs. So we can have it based off the last payment date. We can have it based off vendor prioritization. You include how much you want the pay run to be, or just automate it like I have. And it can take all of the different payments and then summarize it underneath that vendor. And then just run that from a periodic basis, or even schedule for that to run. Produce the payment file and upload and process. And even with this, we can have an approval procedure set up within the system just to automate. And it can generate for an ABA file, but we can actually have tracking against that to make sure that there's no fraud. That's made to be just a simple 1-2 review and process. That way that it's just completing the AP, not to be fully automated, but just to be streamlined. So instead of having 20 touch points, it's cut down to 5. And that would actually be a periodic review that you could schedule. Any questions just on that side? No? Very good. What I could do now is I could jump into the payroll quickly and just give you a quick look at that. Would that be all right? Or is there anything else on the AP side you want to say?
No, not really.
No worries. What I'll do is I'll just jump into my payroll. So the payrolls itself is hooked up so that there is both the payroll facing and the accounting side of payroll. Just going to sign in. What this also does is uses streamline hookup. So we can accommodate for different employment types, payment schedules, have them scheduled into automated payment runs. Naturally incorporates award interpretation, and we'd be sucking that information in from Workbench. But I guess the idea here is, whether it's being managed in Workbench or within Wise itself, is that we could allow for not only award interpretation, but also award maintenance. So that way, anytime that there is an update, you can be alerted, review the update to that award actually happened, and then have the system apply that update to all employment agreements and conditions set up within the system. Standardized forms of employment agreements included, incorporating superannuation qualifications, and self-setup within the system. It also comes with the option for them to have access to the employee portal so that they can then see their leave accruals, their pay slips, and work time completed that would be brought through from Workbench. But it's made to be so just that the payroll is mostly automated in the way that it runs. It's just set up for a review procedure. So that once a pay run is completed and then an audit finalizes, you can then see any specific tasks or warnings and have all of their earnings and leave accrued calculated through the system. Is there any specific processes you need to see within the payroll, or rostering or anything like that, or is it okay?
So for the location for the hours, can that be attached to the jobs in the other system?
Yeah, that's a good question, Justin.
Yes, so all of the timesheet data will be captured through Workbench, and then we'll be pushing up basically a award interpreted pay file basically into here. So all that detail in terms of the job they worked on, depending on whether you're using our field apps, the geolocation of where they were when they logged the time, all that sort of detail will sit in Workbench as part of the project detail.
Yeah, we're just looking for something that will be so streamlined. At the moment it takes, I don't know how long you reckon, Jack? Every week.
Takes a few minutes out of my day.
Days out of your week, isn't it?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Well, it'd be definitely the goal for one, the automation, but also then, through Workbench capturing the detail.
Yep. We do some award interpretation for some pretty large sites. I think you guys was about 65 people. Was that something like that? So about 50 in the field, something.
something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So we would assume once Workbench is set up, assuming getting timesheets in would be the biggest problem, but the award interpreter basically will convert all that time automatically into the appropriate pay items and awards, and then we just push it up into payroll. So if it was taking you more than an hour to push the payroll file through once you'd actually collected the timesheets, I'd be worried, put it that way.
Okay.
Well, just before I guess we wrap it up on the financial side, we wanted to give you a quick look at produced reports for one, I'll just run through the AP side as well and how that can work within the system. What's the key thing that we should show you now, just to, I guess, make sure that everyone's happy with, I guess, the idea of the financials being handled?
Because I was keen to have a look at the setup of a new job in terms of, is it done through the workbench? Is it done through here? That adding the sales order or customer's purchase order information, which obviously then gets used to raise the sales invoice once the work's been completed. It's, as I said, it's very much a volume business. So we receive emails every day with all the sales orders, and obviously once the work's done, a couple of weeks down the track, it's just trying to get the invoices out as efficiently as possible.
Yeah, completely understand. So the order creation, the allocation, and then just the bulk processing. And that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, can I say all of that stuff will really sit in Workbench. So what you call a sales order, typically we would be calling an estimate or a quotation, typically. So you'd start with your construction estimate, which would then form the basis of your budget and potentially a claim schedule if you were going to be progressively billing the job. But that would be all set in Workbench, and it can be templated. So if you're doing recurring type works, they can be template driven. So you can quickly turn over these estimates, but basically you win a quote, roll it through to a job, generates the budget, the claim schedule, push it out to the field, start capturing your costs, you complete it, and then you bill it.
So once it's set up in one place, it just automatically pushes through to the Wiise system as well. We
push through the financial transactions. All the jobbing sits in Workbench. Think of Workbench as being as a project subledger, I guess is probably the best way to describe it. Pushing financial data up into Wiise.
Okay. So yeah, all the ledgers are through Wiise. The project information is all through Workbench.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's
Well,
be mindful of the
makes
time.
sense to move to the Workbench then, yes, and be able to show that.
Yep.
It might be a good segue. Oh, sorry, mate. Yeah, just seeing, Chris, was anything else you wanted to show on that side, my inside, or pretty much covered what you wanted to cover?
The main idea is just, I guess, to show you how the Wiise can actually capture the detail within those financials. And for one, if you had to manually process, how fast that manual processing would be through the system. But it makes sense that, I guess, from here we could jump into the Workbench side, and Justin's got everything prepared to take you through exactly that.
I suppose while it's happening, Chris, maybe I suppose they might be thinking, why Wiise? Why not just Business Central? What's the reasoning for Wiise? You mentioned before there's the partnership with KPG.
More than happy
what was the reason? Yeah, because I think it's important, because obviously, for the region we're in, Australia, I guess it's part of the reasons for being, really, making it easy for us over here.
Yeah, it's good. I'm more than happy to, because the reason that Microsoft incubated the creation of Wiise is that Business Central was basically a template of an ERP solution that was available around the world. The idea there is that a Microsoft partner would then go about tailoring it to be appropriate for Australia and then your business. While Microsoft recognized that while there was a market for that, they're not necessarily moving to the cloud, people wanting to have to spend time being billed for creating of GST statements and things like that. So Wiise was basically set up so that from an IP perspective or a functional setup perspective, a lot of what's done to then make it appropriate for Australia, and we did it with a step forward for SMBs, is included within the system out of the box. A lot of our work within the system has been to remove the need for development. And the last point there is that there's two major releases from Microsoft within a year, and we ourselves have major releases within a year. The idea there is that Wise, as a managed service, maintains and supports the solution locally for you. So you wouldn't have to send a support case through to Microsoft and then have it pinged from someone overseas. It's basically locally supported, and we ourselves coordinate the testing with the Business Central people. So basically developers that made the solution. We coordinate with them every week. It's a Wednesday, 8 p.m. call to Denmark. But basically, we also provide them feedback from clients. We provide them beta testing and round testing. And as well as that, we basically try and support the solution directly from here. So it's both setting it up to be out of the box for SMBs within Australia. It's setting it up to be maintained and future-proofed. But as well as that, it's set up so that for one, it's just a locally supported system.
Yep,
One
that's what we got on
question
board.
One question I was going to ask about the financials, when it comes to allocating payments, both sales, receipts, supplier payments, how streamlined can that be in terms of matching it against, you know, tens or hundreds of invoices that are getting paid at any one time?
Would the scenario be when you receive them, or is it generating in that sense? Is it taking pictures? What's the current way that you guys are having to handle that now with Mild?
Well, receiving payments, obviously just from the remittance advice that we're getting, having to go through and tick or allocate each line of the remittance against the open invoices. Time consuming, and obviously when we're generating supplier payments, you have to basically go and again allocate all the invoices that you're paying in a particular batch. You can't just say we're going to pay all the invoices that are open that are due up until X date.
Okay. So for those 2 points, the checking off from the cash receiving, the system will suggest then within itself, with those 2 clicks that I did on the vendor side, on the customer side, it will then auto allocate, and then you can investigate what it's applied against, or you can manually apply. So to answer it simply, exactly what you're doing right now could be achieved, but the system will suggest and try and basically, I won't say streamline, but just make the process much faster so that that whole step could be completed within 2 clicks. And for the generating the payments, just on that, the payment run that we just made then, it had 4 lines, but underneath that, it was allocating to 15 different invoices. So you could investigate the suggestions, but I guess the hope is that within the system, just to quickly share, underneath each one of these lines, it is auto applied to and prioritize them. So you could manually be completing these steps. But you can see here how just that auto suggestion tool that we used before, the application for you.
So you just generate the list of invoices that are open from a certain cut-off point of view, and you can just automatically pay everything and exclude anything you don't want to pay.
100%. And there could be an approval process to automate it even further. Just suggests, it then sends through the request. The person could review on their phone and then give the approval, and it can auto-generate the file for you. And then the same thing on the cash side as well. It'll suggest, you can then investigate and then reconcile, unless you want to use the bank feeds where it just does it for you.
All right, thank you.
Very good. With that, would it make sense to jump into the Workbench side now and go through the operations?
We might just give a call upstairs and see if any of the guys are available to jump in. Just give me 2 minutes.
Yeah, no worries. It might be good just have a break to take a breath and so you guys can absorb.
No worries.
And you know,